It is that time again. This is the Convo by Design Icon Registry for November. And it's presented by our friends at Pacific Sales. And I find this next guest, it's not a matter of worthiness, right? California native Sue Firestone reflects on 5 decades of creativity, resilience, and reinvention from this episode, which was recorded back in 2019. And everything she said during that episode is true now. From Malibu's fires to Montecito's rebirth, from model homes to hospitality design, and from Disney resorts to her namesake product lines. SFA Design founder Sue Firestone and I explore how her lifetime relationship with nature, her passion for authenticity, and her intuitive approach to design continue to shape California's aesthetic identity. From building one of the largest model home merchandising firms in the country to collaborating with Disney and launching her own collections, Firestone shares how creative intuition, empathy, and mentorship have guided her through the shifting tides of the design business. The Convo by Design Icon Registry is presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company. Pacific Sales is comprised of long-time professionals who love design and architecture as much as you do, which is why it is so fitting that they present this recognition of some of the world's greatest design talent every month here on Convo by Design. And you're going to hear all about it with Sue Firestone right after this. If you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've heard me say this, that the most important word in the design industry is service. Product is important, price is important, selection is important, but stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of a project, any project. How design professionals like you demand great service and your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commission sales professionals. It's really important. It means that their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of experience in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. Now, you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy gift cards, e-gift cards, or 2.5% in rewards checks for every qualified and delivered sale. In addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more than I could possibly tell you about here. And the cherry on top is access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service, again, from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific Sales expert at a showroom today for full details and to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights.
I live in Santa Barbara.
You live in Santa Barbara.
But our main office for SFA Design is actually in Los Angeles on La Cienega.
Okay. Well, my point in mentioning that was to say how sorry I am for your community.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's really interesting. Native Angelino as well. And I love LA. Part of living in LA and surrounding areas is that we have a vibrant but rapidly changing climate.
Right.
And this is the wild, wild west. It really is.
Yeah.
And while these things happen, it changes neighborhoods and it changes communities. So I know how devastating it can be, and what's happened in both Malibu and Santa Barbara is just devastating. Are you seeing? How does? I just wanted to sort of touch on this. How does a neighborhood come back?
Good question. Well, let's start with Montecito in Santa Barbara, because last year was devastating with the mudslide and, 27 people lost. They still haven't found 2 of the children that were, perished in that. And it was so horrible. And I have very close friends and people I know that lost their homes and some that lost their loved ones. So it's I don't think we've come back yet. It was literally just over a year ago. And then, of course, my own property up in Santa Ynez came close to being lost in a fire the year before. And but I grew up in Malibu and on Point Doom, where there was many fires, oftentimes fires, and evacuations. As a teenager growing up on Point Doom, getting all the livestock and animals out was always critical. But this last year, the Woolsey fire that really devastated Malibu was, kind of beyond what I experienced growing up on Point Doom. So, I think between earthquakes, fires, and now they have the floods, it's just, you're right. It's the wild west, even though there's a lot of sophistication in California. But I think we all have to get used to, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. And I grew up with that, so I have a revered feeling towards Mother Nature, and my family and I sail a lot, so we're very respectful of weather, and it's a matter of really just being prepared and understanding and being ready for the next possible disaster. Can come in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's true. I also believe that designers and architects are the ones that are going to help keep these things from happening again in the future. I think that the better designed communities
Agreed.
are prepared for this. And it sort of takes me back to, some of the work that you've done and what I've seen. When did you start doing this? When did you become a designer? When did you know that this is something that you wanted to do?
Well, when I was growing up and we moved around quite a bit, I always noticed that I was the one, even at the age of 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, to pick the home and love walking through the model homes. And when we moved to Malibu when I was 10, I picked the home, I picked my room. And but then I was actually sort of a hippie, barefoot, nature-loving Cal State Northridge major with majoring in pottery. And then 2 friends of mine when I was 21 and in my last year begged me to come part-time to be their receptionist, bookkeeper, junior designer, librarian, and it sort of took over my world. And so I moved from pottery to interior design within a year, and then after about 3 years was doing so well at Design One, actually became president. So it was an overnight sort of, switching from being a barefooted hippie potter to having to put on high heels and court clients and do presentations, and it just came naturally to me.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah.
That it comes natural. It's not a natural thing.
I agree, but I do think it's learnable. I mean, I've seen people come and beg for a job and intern, and again, I think the 10,000 hour rule, like the Beatles always talk about, anybody can learn something and become pretty good at it if they put in the hours. So whether it's school or I believe truly in real life experience, it's a matter of, yes, it comes easier maybe at 5,000 hours to some people, but which it did for me. But I've seen people who seem like they have no taste, but immerse themselves in it because they have a passion and they can learn it. So it's not as mysterious as maybe some designers want it to make it. I truly believe it's practice, open mind, understanding, and then, yeah, some of us have more of a natural knack for it.
Yeah, I think that the business is simple, but it's not easy.
No, it's grueling.
It is grueling, but it really is simple. And I think that oftentimes we make it a little bit too complicated.
True.
Where we are today compared to where we were when you started in the business, it's really different.
Yeah.
And you have to learn along the way. I mean, every aspect of what you do is different now, I would imagine, than when you started. Do you have a process for learning?
The process I learned very early on was to listen to my clients. And, I had a psychology minor, plus I have a lot of psychologists in my family. So I think the listening and being open Plus Design One developed as into the largest model home merchandiser in the country during the 70s and early 80s. So we couldn't have a signature look. We had to listen to these developers who were selling their homes, to who the client was, who the mythical client was. So we always had sort of a Rorschach test for real clients, and then basically a what if for an imaginary client, a first-time buyer, empty nester. And it was very easy sort of to adapt the style that we were doing to the taste of our client, or, like I said, to the mythical client. And we did that for about 10 years and grew very large. We actually ended up opening an office in Paris for Kaufman and Broad. And so it was, and then we had our lucky break into hospitality. Disney was looking for a non-hospitality designer, more had a residential background. That was us. And then we started doing their vacation homes. And then we took off and ended up doing 18 projects while Michael Eisner was there, which was unheard of. No other design firm had done that much work for Disney.
You hear stories about Disneyland and what happens behind the scenes, so that the presentation to the end user is as powerful as it can be. What was your experience like in that environment?
Well, the experience, I have to give a lot of credit to Michael Eisner, who was an incredible visionary. He knew the story he wanted to tell, whether it was a movie or a hotel he was building, and he put the same passion behind it. So let's say we did the boardwalk, which, he hired Robert Stern, these, incredible star architects we got to work with. And basically the setting was turn of the century hotels, and we did all of our research. So every piece of furniture, fabric had to be authentically themed to that era. And so that was really the story dictated the process, the design process. And for us, we just got it and we listened to him. And of course, they had tight budgets, which we were used to. So it was really a matter of, again, doing our research, continuing the story. And with Disney, for us, it was a magical connection and a magical experience. And I don't really know how they do it now. And I think he was, again, probably too much into design, because as they continued to grow and they bought ESPN and ABC, he still insisted on picking out the fabric of every single chair. And I don't think you do that when you're the chairman of billions of dollars of companies.
You know what? It's hearing you say that. Yeah, you're right. But by the same token, isn't that where you can really attribute creative genius and the passion, for sure, in saying, I love this, I want everything about it top down to look, feel, and be a certain way.
Yes, but I think in learning how to run a business that grows, I think the top tier person has to always find people to replace them, and that means at every level. And I think the mistake that happened with Michael Eisner, which is no secret, people have written about it, analyzed it every which way, is that after Frank Wells died, he sort of got a little bit too deep detail-oriented and started micromanaging, and that's why he lost Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was a genius in his own right, and he should have replaced himself even at this level. He had an heir apparent, Wing Chao, who went on to, do other things, but Wing could have, should have, would have been his ears and eyes for that process. He just didn't have time to micromanage anymore, and you don't do that when you're way up the tier. I mean, it's just a matter of, you got to find people to replace you, and you have to give them free rein. And design firms are the same. Unless you're the only one designing and you're a small firm, you've got to hire talent and let them go.
Yeah, I was going to back up and ask you if that's your approach.
It's my personal approach,
Yeah.
yes. That I've always liked to find talent and teach them how I handle clients, and then let them bring in their own signature or personality. I think it's the only way to really grow a business, no matter what the business is.
Let's back up a second and go back to merchandising for model homes,
Right.
because I think that's really incredible to be sort of at the nucleus of that idea, because it was new at the time.
It was new at the time, and actually, some people remember model homes, but today it's very different. It's staging, and we don't do it. I mean, once in a while we'll be asked to do a model, and we will do it if it's a custom design. Like, for instance, we did the W residences, which are selling, for very expensive high-end at the W Hollywood Hotel and the residential penthouses. But there are companies now that have warehouses full of furniture and will stage. But basically what they're doing is they're pulling in really kind of cheap, not to scale furniture. And it works, I think, for the most part. But if somebody's at the very high end, we'll still be called in to do a model, per se. But back in the 70s and 80s, there were tract homes being built all over the world, and we did condo conversions everywhere. So it was a big deal then. For instance, in Paris, Coffin and Brogue, we did all of their condo apartments, and they were very, very expensive. And it was a great run. It really taught us to sort of, again, have not a signature look associated with our name.
And I love it too, the design house concept, and air quotes are flying all over the place. Design house. Kind of the modern design house really is tantamount to a model home idea. Model homes at the time, when you're talking about starting out, is not what they are today.
No.
Right? It was you actually put in there was a client, whether there was a real client or a
Yes.
or a fictional.
Yes.
There was a client, and they had personalities, and they
Right.
had hobbies and habits,
And the children had ages, and exactly. We would accessorize to exactly what that mythical family was. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And then when we ended up doing private residential, which we do quite a bit of now, I think it trained us to really open our eyes, listen, and then help come back to somebody that actually knows sort of who they are, but help them even decide more who they are in their own taste. That's what we'll do a Rorschach test. We'll come up with a lot of design palettes and say respond, even say something you hate, you love, even if it's a small picture on the board. And then we can do our own analysis and understand really what their taste level is and what look they'll be open to. So it's a matter of training and understanding and a process.
Do you think that amount of training, detail, and process is lost today, by and large, because social media is prolific? It's ubiquitous.
Yeah, but even more than that, I would say that some of the residential clients started to believe quite a few years ago, like maybe 6-7 years ago, with Restoration Hardware, for example, that they could do it themselves because they walk into a showroom and see a room that they basically feel like they could live in, and then they'll buy everything from Restoration Hardware. Now, the negatives about that is that the quality of the furniture is not up to the level that when a client really hires a designer, what they're getting is a much, much higher level and name brand authenticity, if you will. And believe me, it's not like our designers don't use RH because it's so easy, so convenient. So for secondary rooms, whatever, it's an easy no-brainer. But I feel like too many even wealthy clients have started to think they could do it themselves. And it's like, do you really fix your own car? Do you really, you don't hire a lawyer? I mean, people need designers. If they really want to have a spectacular home, if they can afford it, a designer, I can't stress it enough, will give you a much better home that's you rather than just doing it yourself. I don't care how sophisticated you think you are. I just think it's a shame. And yeah, sure, social media has also maybe hurt that in a way, and the copying of the Instagram designs, it's just overkill. But I actually think that some of these, and back in the 70s and 80s, it was Christ, believe it or not. We competed with Christ Furniture because they had beautiful showrooms. They did a California look. And I remember, someone like Magic Johnson going to Christ Furniture to furnish his entire home or several homes, and instead of hiring a designer. And it was fine. It was the look he wanted. But, I do think, again, the sophisticated client will hire a designer because a designer will actually help them achieve a unique look for them.
Well, and I feel at the same time, it's not just about the style, but the functionality of it. You can take a look off a showroom floor and you can put it in your house, and you may even be able to replicate that look 100%. But you're going to live differently. You don't live in a showroom. You don't live in a vacuum. There are environments to the home, to the environment, to the neighborhood, to the individual family, to the way that you use the space. It's all different. And
True.
A designer who comes in and does their job the way that professional designers do, they factor in all of those things. It's like, look, you may love that sofa, but you're going to destroy it in 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that, again, I just hope that the world sort of swings back to, again, hiring professionals, because we're sort of just sad at how many people, even very wealthy people, can afford it. I can do it myself. I'm just shocked. So I think that, again, these beautiful retail outlets have had actually probably the most negative impact on people hiring professionals than even social media.
I've said this for a while. I consider architects to be our futurists today, defining the way and the manner in which we're going to be living in 5, 10, 15 years from now. I consider designers to be the sort of arbiters of what it's going to look like. You have that combination of form and function. And I'm curious, we've seen a lot, maybe at some level, at a certain level, the formal living room still stays in because you've got a 10,000 square foot home. The formal dining is still there. By and large, in the smaller footprints, especially with that California style of living, you open up to the outside, certain formalities go away. I'm curious, what are you seeing? Are you seeing that? Are you seeing anything else sort of develop on the horizon that may be surprising?
I don't think anything's surprising. I think the evolution in California being sort of a front runner in terms of lifestyle, the envy of the world, if you will, including, indoor-outdoor living spaces, which now we see clients in New York wanting that, even though the weather is, or Pittsburgh. I mean, we have clients that have relocated from California to Pittsburgh, but they want still the same California lifestyle. It's challenging, but California has always been a front runner. I think back to, the hippie days of the 60s and the 70s, where, again, this is where it started. And I think as a design influencer, California has just not fallen off the mat since then. So the California look, if you will, is definitely indoor-outdoor living, more casual than formal. And I think leaning back to nature and more organic and sensitive to, recyclable, not hurting the planet. We've again been the front runner on that front. But now designers have to take note of that, and it's kind of an easy no-brainer because most of our vendors really are throwing products at us that are green, not damaging the planet. And I think that, again, staying local to not have the shipping costs, getting back to made in America or even California crafted has become huge. So I think that's where it's going to stay as an influencer. I'm not sure that answers your question. I don't think there's anything new or surprising, but just less and less formal, and then more and more high quality, durable fabrics. I think the move from hospitality or commercial, if you will, fabrics into the home, that's a huge thing where you can't now tell the difference between a commercial fabric per se and a residential fabric. They have to have the same lifespan, and they also have the same sensitivity to not killing the planet.
And thank you, by the way. Not only did you answer the question, but it dovetails nicely into sort of the next place I wanted to go with you, and that is designer as product designer, product purveyor, product creator. I guess it's the next step in the evolution of a design business that's hitting on all cylinders. Tell me about that. What's the process?
Yeah, I don't know if that's true I do know of some designers that even from the start of their businesses, Kelly Wersler, for example, Clodaw, but I think for many firms and for many designers, it's not really the path. For me, it was a personal passion of, after 4 decades of dealing with clients, kind of wanting to go back to my roots, which was being sort of hands-on, tactile, and designing product that I love and that really is my taste. So it was a personal transition for me, but the company still goes on under Kara Smith, my partner, and she's, really running the company full steam ahead. So I lucked out. I wouldn't be able to do the product design if I was doing that still, but like I said, women like Kelly Wursler and Claude have seem to be able to do both, but I think they have huge teams on both sides helping with the firm and the product. I'm just doing the product on my own, and it's a kind of a shift that I was able to do because I found someone else to run the ship. And also just a matter of, like I said, 4 decades of dealing with clients where I just decided I was done. And rather than retiring, I decided I wanted to move into designing product. And I've been lucky enough to have enough of a name where, again, it was an easy sell to Kravit, to A. Rudin, to McCarran carpets and Fuse lighting and marble systems for tile. So I don't think it's for every designer. I think you have to establish your name, maybe for decades. Again, Claude and Kelly didn't. They did it all at the beginning. So, but for me, it's been a great choice.
You know what, Sue? Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, the way I've been thinking for quite some time is that it is a natural progression. But you know what? Maybe it's not for everyone. I guess where it came from was when you work in the environment, you're working with clients, you're working with product manufacturers, you're working with suppliers, and you're working with reps, and you're working with showrooms, and you get a feel for how everyone does business. At some point, you start to say to yourself, golly, why don't they understand that we do business a little differently? Or I'm not saying every vendor is like this. I'm saying that there are some, maybe even the ones whose product you absolutely love and have to the point where you sort of go off and think, gosh, I can do that.
Good point. And again, I have to say that the 4 decades of dealing with vendors, and then particularly on the high-end residential side, which was a decision for me to go into product design for that, which surprised some people. They said, "Oh, don't you have a hospitality background?" I'm like, "Yeah, but my passion really lies with the private residential." And for private residential and even for hospitality, I've been designing custom product for, again, 4 decades. So it was in my blood already to custom design. And then I chose the particular vendors. I did A. Rudin, for example, because they were always very open to custom designing their furniture for us. And also the quality was there, the high-end quality. And I think it's no accident. I didn't know at the beginning that, they're a 100-year-old, 5th-generation family-run business. Kravit, the same thing. It was really weird that 100-year anniversaries hit both the same time I started working with them. And Kravit I chose because, again, I had noticed that they chose some very, very high-end designers that I admired, including Diane von Furstenberg, and to Kate Spade. Sadly, she didn't last with us, but fashion designers, and then also a lot of the very highest end residential designers. So I selected them to go with on the fabric. Plus, they had an international outlet, which I was excited about. So, I chose very carefully who I went after, and knock on wood, it's been a home run with each case so far.
Yeah. Tell me, backing up a little bit, tell me about your process as it relates to the development and creation of the product.
Sure.
How do you, and let me preface this with, I have a little bit of experience, very little, in creating desks for broadcast, for podcasts, for that sort of thing. And I mention that because I've gone through the process. And boy, sometimes it can be a little easier than other times. Sometimes it can be an outright challenge.
Good question. What happened about 5 years ago when I decided I wanted to do this, I decided to put together a series of about 20 color boards. And I had flown out to Kravit in New York and met with Scott Kravit and his right hand, Steve Prata. They showed me color boards that other designers had done, and I was kind of blown away, but I decided I'm going to do better. And I put in many, many hours with friends and family, like working overtime to do these incredibly huge, bigger than anything I saw, and more developed, that really said, what I wanted the Sue Firestone collection to be. And it's all about me, growing up in the 60s and 70s in Point Dume, barefoot on the beach, kind of the Coachella vibe, but 50 years ago. And that's my love, and organic, back to nature. So I put together these boards and then presented them to Kravitz. They were blown away. And then their designers, once we signed a deal, used those boards to create designs for me, sent them to me. I would approve, change, bless, change the color, etc. It was a great, easy process. But it all started with the brand boards that I created that were reflective of my signature as I wanted it to develop. Showed the same boards to A-Root, and again, they took off from that to create upholstery pieces. And then I actually hired someone to help me work, somebody who designs furniture, to sit down and design pieces of furniture that had live edge. Because I've always gone to Mimi London, but I wanted to create sort of a live edge that was a little bit more feminine, if you will, less massive, less ski-oriented, and something that could be used in California, indoor, outdoor living. And it's been a great success. So I, again, used the years of Ralph's, eye for upholstery as a sounding board for that. And then my own intuition in terms of the case pieces. And now I'm doing the same with the carpets. And with lighting, it's proving a little more challenging. I'm going back to the owner of Fuse and saying, hey, I need to sit down with you and design this because it's new to me and I need the sounding board.
And good on you for being able to say that. That's not easy to do.
I had to.
Yeah, but to be able to recognize it, did you find yourself struggling with it for a while before you capitulated and said, okay,
I struggled for a week, and then I just reached out to him and said, we have to do this together.
Is that how you are? Is that your personality?
I think so. I'd rather be straightforward than BS.
No. It's not the difference between being straightforward or BSing it. It's, I don't know, to me, it's kind of like fighting with it. How long are you willing to fight with it? To say, I can do this myself, before you get to the point where it's like, okay, you know what? I need some help.
Sure. Well, the color boards were easy because, again, I just knew I'm doing that again for 4 decades. So that was an easy no-brainer. But to design something that's technically not something I'm familiar with, that's, again, why I referred back to using Ralph as, he's grown up with upholstery. He knows it. And using him and then this furniture designer who I worked with, I need to rely on the technical aspects of the license, and that's why it worked out well with Kravitz, because they have incredible designers in-house, and they just knew what they were doing and what would work and what mills to use. And again, so I didn't have to get educated in that area.
Do you remember the feeling, the emotions? I'm just curious what the feeling was the first time you got product back with your name on it that you designed, that you first saw. Do you remember what that felt like?
It was thrilling. Yeah, it was a whole new feeling because, again, after years and years and years of just having a lot of satisfaction of designing for clients and seeing the finished product, that was a thrill. But this was a different thrill because for me it was really a reflection of my loves, my taste, what's important to me. So it was a whole different, exciting thrill.
So taking that back to the work, and this kind of, it feels to me, and what I've seen is having that product line. And while you pointed out that it's not for everyone, and that's true, it seems like an opportunity to take a creative back to their roots, as you've mentioned, and sort of reset the table. Modern times, with those roots, like in your case, it's that created California feel. So I love to see when creative as business person takes the passion and wraps it into the business and it resonates with an audience. And then it seems to be, from back to the business side, to try to figure out ways in which to recreate that, duplicate it, replicate it. How do you do that? What is your plan? What is your vision? How do you look into the future and say, okay, here's what I love doing, here's what's selling, here's the combination of the two, here's a project that I want to start. How do you figure, knowing how much time you have available and knowing that time is always stretched and it's the one thing we can never add more of, how do you plan the business like that?
In terms of licensing, which is really sort of what I'm all about right now, there's sort of twofold answers. One is that I'm going back to my staff consistently and saying, kind of doing a lunch and learn to them, which is hysterical because they're like, oh my God, the founder is coming in and selling her product to us. But hoping that they'll, get passionate about it. And clients that knew me, of course, hoping my designers will show them whatever new product is. And it seems to be working, but also there is my name recognition, which I actually, didn't realize I had as much notoriety as I do. I mean, it sounds humble and everything, but I'm excited about that. And I plan to keep going. I'd like to have, in total, maybe 10 to 12 licenses. But again, it's something that's easy for me to do. I'm traveling for fun with my family 6 months of the year, and that'll be my next inspiration after, Malibu and growing up in the 60s. But I'd love to do plumbing. I'd love to, like I said, fuse lighting. I'm knocking on wood that I can get that together. I would like to go on and do other hard surfaces and outdoor furniture. I think bedding, pillows, etc. So the list goes on. Whatever designers need, I would like to actually design all the product, with different selected vendors. So, but I'm not in a hurry, and my leisure time is very important to me. So it's a matter of doing it on my own schedule and my own time.
Two things you said. I mean, everything you said I find fascinating and really interesting and true, but two things you said in particular. The first is regarding your name. When did you know you were a brand? Not a designer. When did you know you were a brand?
I honestly don't think I knew it until I approached Kravet and A. Rudin, and they said, of course, we'd be open to talking to you. And I was thinking I had to do a harder sell. I actually, I've been in the world for a long time. I guess I've had more exposure than I knew. I really was humbly surprised. So great. I'll take advantage of it now.
Does that surprise you? Does that kind of with my background in brand development and seeing how hard people work on the jobs that they do, and they just keep their head down and they just keep working and they just keep producing remarkable content and remarkable spaces and remarkable products and remarkable things, and all of a sudden one day you wake up and you go, oh, I got lucky. One day you wake up and lightning struck. Lightning didn't strike. You put a lot of work into it, and in that time you became a brand, and I just find it interesting, and it's incredibly inspirational.
I think people knew of my name more than I knew, but I think, again, the first recognition was like, oh, you do hotels, don't you? And then secondarily, yes, we do residences also. So I had to kind of reapproach, Kravet and A. Rudin. I don't want to do hotel furniture or hotel fabrics. I just don't. I really want to go for the very high-end, one-of-a-kind, audience that I like and more identify with. So yes, the name recognition was out there, but I kind of had to switch people into seeing me more as experienced in the residential arena, because we, in all honesty, haven't gotten the amount of notoriety that we deserve, because a lot of our clients will not let us publish their homes. I mean, they're very private, and so it's really word of mouth, and I don't think even the design community is aware to the level of the clients that we have had the last 20 years in private residential. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
Does that frustrate you?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it does. But at the same time, I get it. I understand. I mean, privacy, especially with social media these days, is like, I don't blame people for being afraid. So we respect that. And I've sometimes made a clause, which I've been surprised some of our clients have actually agreed to, where I won't show them a picture of your finished home, but if I can just talk about you as one of our clients and name drop you, and they've agreed to that, which has opened up many doors for us. So that has helped.
Yeah, I imagine. The other, the other thing you said that I sort of grabbed onto was, in my experience, the number one source of external inspiration for designers and architects, for the trade, the core of the trade, is travel. And I get that. And I'm curious, when you travel, because you travel a lot with the family and on business, but when you travel, are you a traveler, or do you go and you're kind of always working a little bit? You're always kind of like, oh, I see, that would look great in this room, or that, I could, do you know what I'm saying?
I'd say I used to be like that, but until maybe 5-6 years ago, where I actually started to travel completely in a leisurely way, but looking more for things that would inspire a fabric or a piece of furniture, or seeing something unique that maybe can translate into a lighting fixture. So my eyes have been open in a different way. I was walking along the beach in the Pearl Islands, which are these, nomadic culture off of Panama, where literally the main thing they eat is iguanas, the local people. But it's so beautiful. But I was looking at this sand pattern, and I thought, oh my God, that would be a beautiful fabric. Brought that picture home, sent it to Kravitz. So been inspired by more exotic locations and again, nature, then it's just something I'm just always been drawn towards. So I still am. So it's more lately I've been looking at things for inspiration for my products rather than for a particular client.
You know what I also think is fun when talking to California designers, especially Los Angeles-based California designers, and we're talking about travel and realizing that we happen to live and work in one of the top travel destinations in the world.
Exactly. And that was sort of my pitch, if you will, to Kravitz, because they have 25 to 30 extremely well-known designers. But I said to them, do you really have a true California designer? And, raised in Malibu and very passionate about, the look that was introduced in the 70s by, icons such as Michael Taylor and Steve Chase, who were my original influencers and created the original California look. And they said, went through their roster, and I fit into the right niche at the right time.
Isn't that amazing? Being good, you have to be good to be in the game. But then there's that luck factor.
Right. And timing. Right place at right time. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Going back just a little bit one more time, do you have any favorite? I love asking the question because it's almost like asking about who's your favorite child, But asking about favorite projects, some have said no, I really love them all, and I get that. That makes sense. And some have said no. You know what? Here are the ones, and here's why. Do you have favorite projects?
Sure. When we worked for Disney, again, the 18 projects, there was a few favorites of mine. We finished a great vegan restaurant in Santa Barbara, in Montecito, actually, Oliver's, which is just very much my look, very clean, very California, very indoor-outdoor. We did it for a billionaire who just wanted to have a restaurant as a hobby, which is fun. But now I actually more am geared towards even favorite projects that I see other designers do. And I always think about resorts, and, the almond resorts around the world have always been something I've been amazed by. And, they usually are 30 to 40 rooms. And there was one called Almanquila, which is on the island of Bali, but it's built up in the trees. You're 30 feet to 100 feet above the ground. And it's just the experience that you have being immersed in nature that I absolutely love. So I those tend to be more on my favorites list these days than anything else.
California creative, and I'm going to wrap this up, but California creative, California culture covers a lot of ground. When you think about the Los Angeles area, as an Angelino, do you have any favorite parts of LA?
If it wasn't so hard to drive around, I'd have a lot more.
I know, right?
Obviously, when I grew up in Malibu, we had no high school, so I was bused into Samo High. So I've been aware of LA, and of course I've always loved Venice Beach, but it's changed a lot, and it's just now it takes an hour to get from the PDC to that area. So I don't know if I have any favorites in LA. Again, Santa Barbara has been my home for the last 25 years. I did live in LA before that for 20 years. I I think LA has everything to offer, but again, I think LA itself, in terms of designers, kind of look towards the beach or the mountains for really design inspiration. Not so much the urban experience is really what people think of as California. So, and I wanted to just point out something else. With A. Rudin, it was really actually easy to, again, come at the right moment because they had never had a female designer. So, again, it was the right moment for them to introduce first female designer. And, they've been in business for 100 years, so that was a coup to me and them.
Mouth agape. How is that possible?
Well, they've been only doing licensing for the last maybe 15 years, and they have some amazing designers. But
Yeah.
I just happened to be the first woman who approached them, and it was great timing.
How amazing is that? Congratulations.
Thank you.
And phenomenal timing as well as we've said.
Yeah, and they made a big deal about it.
Yeah.
As for their launch.
Do you think, this is kind of a silly question, but do you think that that's still an issue? Gender?
No, not really. I mean, truthfully, no. I think just inherently there has been a lot of incredible male designers, both in fashion and interior design, over the years. And I think it's been easy for women to come into their own. I don't feel like it's been... I've never been blocked or because of being female.
No, I don't mean blocked or anything. I just mean I think that there's been and I'm going way off topic here, but I just think that it's been interesting that design has been such a heavily male dominated industry, and it to me it's always been sort of counterintuitive, only because everyone sees design, everyone sees beauty, everyone sees the creative. Anyway, this has been so much fun.
Yes, definitely, Josh.
I really appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you for doing this.
Sure. Thank you.
This wraps up another episode of the Convo by Design Icon Registry, a celebration and recognition of true masters in the art of design and the mastery of all that encompasses in the pursuit of making better the lives of those they serve and giving back along the way. Thank you, Sue. Thanks for listening to Convo by Design. Thank you to my partner sponsors, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for presenting the Convo by Design Icon Registry, and Convo by Design partner sponsors, TimberTech and Design Hardware. And thank you for taking the time that we share every week. I couldn't do this without you. Wouldn't want to. So listen, I do hope that this show helps you stay motivated, inspired, and focused so you can rise above the chaos.